Cold steel, code 4, Tanto blade coming at you. Stay tuned, guys. Hi gang, Rob here, coming to you on the 23rd day of February 2014. Sort of a first impressions or an initial review of the cold steel code 4. This particular variant is the Tanto blade variety. And I gotta tell you, what a knife. Yeah, really, what a knife. Let's get into the specifics before I start characterizing things. What we have here is a 3 5/8 inch. Yes, 3 5/8, not 3 1/2, not 3 3/4. It is 3 5/8 inches long. An American Tanto style blade as popularized by cold steel founder Lynn Thompson. You'll notice that the main portion of the blade is hollow ground. The Tanto tip is flat ground. The steel is Japanese AUS 8A steel, the annealed version of AUS 8. Looks like we've got, what, 3.5 millimeter stock here. And some features of this knife are very typical of the triad lock cold steel line of knives. It does feature the triad locking system, which is a re-engineered mid-lock or lockback variety of mechanism. But instead of the interface between the lock bar and the blade tang being all the knife relies on for its lockup, we add this stop pin, which the back of the blade rests on, as does the lock bar. If you notice, while the knife is in the middle of its travel, we have a really large rise in the lock bar. The tooth of the lock bar on the triad lock is really long. It takes a long travel actuation in order to release that lock. That's one advantage of the triad lock over a traditional lockback. The other is that this stop pin, as we've discussed before, distributes all the negative forces of any kind on the spine of the blade throughout the entire frame of the knife. In this case, 6061 hard anodized aluminum. Instead of the tooth on the lock bar and the tang of blade bearing all those forces, and their compound forces as well. On a traditional lockback, a negative impact on the blade is going to not only pull the tang of the blade in this direction as the knife rotates, it's also going to rise and make the lock bar try to come undone, pushing upward. With the triad lock and this stop pin, it mitigates both of those forces, making this lock virtually impossible to disengage accidentally, even under radical negative forces. On some cold steel model knives, the triad lock tested to hold 800 pounds, about 2 or 3 inches from the pivot. You know, do the math there, guys. You know, we're talking in excess of 2,000 inch-pounds or an inch-ton. Pretty impressive. Way overkill for a folding knife. The triad lock, while not being the necessarily the smoothest or the easiest to deploy or close of any lock on the market, is by far the strongest. So we got that going for us. The handle of this knife, as I said, 6061 aluminum, aircraft grade, and it is hard anodized in a pleasing dark gray. A lot of people have likened this to the same color as Chris Reeves Sebenza. I think it's a little darker than Sebenza. It does tend to appear on camera to have a bit of a green cast to it, I can tell you that it does not. It is a dark, almost slate gray. The width of the handle, or the thickness of the handle, about 3/8 of an inch, which is what makes this Code 4 really special among the cold steel line of triad locks. Most of its knives are pretty chunky in that handle thickness dimension, and thus not very pocketable. Not so for the Code 4. For a knife with a 5-inch handle and a 3 5/8 inch blade, in pocket, the thing is just amazing. Typical modern cold steel fare as far as pocket clip goes. Speak of pocketability. It comes with 2 clips, both tip up, one designed to be mounted as this one is for left hand carry, and then one with a reverse curve that mounts for right hand carry. The clip is way more than adequate for retention. One of my very few complaints about this knife is that its tip rides so close to the frame of the knife. If you've got a pocket with a rather thick seam, it's a little bit difficult to start. It inserts pretty well once you can get that tip of the clip over the sort of bead of your pocket seam, but it is a little tough to get started. In most pants of mine, it's a two-hander to get in pocket. I've really toyed with the idea of straightening out this last little bend in the clip to make that less of an issue. And I probably will do so. This knife I have had in my possession for about a week, and I've carried it most of those days, and shockingly, my friends, it is still wearing its factory edge. Number one, it came pretty darn sharp and very symmetrical from its Taiwan manufacturing facility. Golf course clap. Yes, I love my Taiwanese blades, don't I? Why? Because many of them come this good. The reason I've been carrying this for about a week or so before I did this review is because I really wanted to see how this hard anodized coating held up. And as you can see, I've been carrying it with wedding ring in my left hand. I kind of figured on a knife that runs in the sub $60 range most places, I kind of figured the cold steel might cut some corners when it came to the anodization. But let's take a close look, shall we? My ring will contact a knife mostly in the spine area right through here. You guys see any scratching? I believe the backspacer are also to be aluminum with the same coating. Guys, there's not a mark on this knife. And this is now let's look down here in the inside edge of the knife. My ring contacts it there too. There's just nothing there, guys. I would say after limited use, this coating, at least on a par with the hard anodizing that Benchmade does, for instance, on the 940. I would say that it does not have as much grip as the 940 does. In fact, it's pretty darn smooth, almost soap-like. that may help the coating resist impacts and scratches a little better than the 940, and so far it has resisted perfectly. Weight on this knife, 4.3 ounces. That is its published weight, and it is also the weight that I measure it at every single time. So that's pretty impressive. It's an all metal knife with an over 3.5 inch blade. Some pretty robust stock, and it's robust all the way to the tip, and that full thickness carried down over 1/4 inch from the spine. To weigh in at less than 4.5 ounces, I think, is a pretty neat feat. And the reason for that, of course, would be these really thin aluminum scales. Let's talk about the blade shape real quick. I am not a Tanto blade guy, as most of you know, and let's wipe this as we're going to talk about the blade. And you know, the American Tanto is not the same as a traditional Japanese Tanto, but it is beautiful in its own way, isn't it? I love the versatility of the Tanto as Lynn Thompson and Cold Steel do it. You've got this deeply hollow ground main blade, super thin behind the edge, guys. I'm going to say this is under 20 thousandths thick behind the edge. And then we're up to full thickness right here as we come steeply down for the Tanto portion of the edge, which gives us a nicely reinforced tip. Much more conventional American Tanto grind and profile than we saw a few weeks ago on the Ontario Utilitech 2 Tanto. That knife has both edges flat ground, or both main grind and Tanto grind flat, with almost the same angle of approach. So the main portion of the knife on the Utilitech that's designed for slicing has the same profile as the Tanto point. So while the knife is a great slicer, hilt to tip, it is not the kind of robust profile that you really expect in an American Tanto. The Code 4 is. You know, as traditional now American Tanto blades go, the Cold Steel Code 4 is closer to that concept than the Utilitech. In fact, this knife is the concept. And isn't it handsome? Thank you, Lynn, for a beautifully satin finished Cold Steel. No stupid black Teflon coating, no stone wash. Guys, they took their time with this. They really, really did. Look at how crisply the satin finish transitions from flats to hollow grind, from hollow grind to Tanto. There's nothing rounded or blurred. The satin grind lines are perfectly straight. They're perfectly consistent on both sides of the knife. That doesn't happen by accident. Look at the transition between that hollow grind and that Tanto point. Isn't that gorgeous? John from One All's Pub, I should have written down your word. Please weigh in the comments. Tell us what that's called. Or anybody else who knows. It's a Japanese word, sort of like Pokemon or something. Let us know what it is, because I forgot. The thumb stud on this knife is traditional modern Cold Steel, asymmetrical and reversible. It's got a flat screwdriver head in one side. This is the short side. It can be removed and changed. This one, of course, is set up for lefty carry. Deployment on this knife. This is something to talk about. If you guys own Recon 1s or American Lawman, and you think, man, the knife is just not very fast, hard to get out. It requires a little bit of wrist action with the thumb. They did something in this knife, and I think I know what it is. We'll talk about that in a minute, but watch my hand. We're going to do no wrist, nothing but thumb, and frankly, it doesn't need that much thumb. This knife is fast, guys. It's really fast. It doesn't take a lot of concentration to deploy. And let's check this out. Watch this thing drop. Do that from the side. Just nicked my knuckle. Look, she owns me. If you're going to do that, keep your hand fully forward into the choil. Like this. See what happens when I turn sideways to give you guys a better view? I bleed. I bleed for you. Probably bleeding on my knife. Okay. But with that free a blade, guys, there's no side-to-side play to be found in this knife. It's just amazing. I haven't had it apart yet. You are seeing this knife as received. So no internal polishing has happened, no sharpening has happened. It's just this good. Now I think the reason that we see such a quick deployment on this knife is because of how they designed the tang of the blade. Let's see if I can show you this. Can you see that sort of point right here, the end of that tang? It really acts as almost like a little booster rocket. When that thing clears the back spring, there's nothing but smooth sailing all the way to open. So once your thumb bumps it over the back spring, it just flies open. A little bit different design than most cold steels. However, that little point that you see does give a little bit of grittiness as it rotates around that little tiny piece of surface area along the back spring. So right in this point of deployment, you're going to feel just a little grittiness. I will say after a week of use, it seems to be smoothing out. I kind of thought that when I took the blade apart after I sharpen it, I would round that and polish it just a little. I'm not sure that I will because it seems to be smoothing out on its own. And guys, if you saw John's video of this knife when I was pub, you heard him talk about he thought his knife was rubbing on the handle as he deployed it. I don't think that's what's going on, at least not with this knife. I can't make it touch the handle, at least visibly. I think that grittiness John might have been feeling, certainly it is on my knife, is that little pointy portion of tang sliding along the back spring. I've also noticed just a little bit of stick intermittently upon release. You can hear that just a little. There again, it has smoothed out over the week I've owned it. Don't know if I'll do any work in there or not. And guys, the thing is so darn solid, I hesitate to even put a stone to any of those internals because it's so good the way it is. Let's talk about the ergos on this handle. Sorry guys, sorry TNPers. Jimping, not there. Got a couple small grooves machined into the aluminum handle, but you get virtually no traction or purchase from them. Do you need jimping on this knife with the mild thumb ramp and the large finger groove? I don't think you do. Can it still function in a tactical role with a slick handle and lack of jimping? I think it can. I think it'd be a fine backup emergency tactical blade, as well as a good large EDC knife. I just don't see a hand going forward on that knife. I just don't. I don't have a death grip on it, and I'm yanking on it as hard as I can. It's just not going anywhere. How about in the reverse grip? Oh. Yeah, it's almost made for this grip. Just no hot spots anywhere. I can tell the clip is there. My middle finger picks up the tip. Oh, there's a little, I'm still bleeding. And the show must go on, guys. Just beautiful in the reverse grip. Let's talk about the hammer grip. Super secure. My pinky and ring finger are really holding the knife securely, and it's buried in the web of my hand. No hot spot on the finger guard. And let's come back into a draw cut grip. A little bit of a dig into the web of my hand with this second peak here. Not a big deal though. It's just very good. You know, for a knife that really makes its hay by being slim and pocketable, the handle is very functional as a handle. There is just really not much to dislike about this knife. I got really one thing, don't I? I have a pocket clip that's just a little hard to insert into a pants pocket, but that can be remedied so easily. This knife is not going to need really any of the work I had to do to my Recon 1 and my Lawman because the blade finish is correct out of the box. The edge grinds, I'll try to come in close and show them to you. They're really symmetrical and they're really consistent. This is the factory edge you're looking at, guys. Hasn't even seen a strop. Check out the sharpening notch. Good job, Cold Steel. This new notch and new plunge grind, almost a right angle plunge grind, is also present on the Recon and Lawman series of knives. I think they've been listening. This thing's going to be a dream to sharpen. Shall we see? I don't know. I haven't really done a cut test with this. I've used it a little bit, but this is some of my really limp Nacho Shooter Supply catalog paper. I find it to be at least as hard to slice as phone book paper, as you guys know. Let's see what we got. Ha! Would you look at that? Guys, that is really, really good out of the box sharpness. I'm working on the Tanto here. Just a little bit blunt. There it goes though. Right through it. Oh my. Are you kidding me? Whoop. That's more meat than the knife, I fear. Come over here. Guys, this knife is just right. I'm telling you what. You've heard me talk a little bit in recent months and weeks about the quality that we see from Ontario Knife Company on their Rat series and their Utilitech series of knives. This Cold Steel Code 4 takes no back seat to any of that stuff. Au contraire, mon frere. You know, priced almost twice as much as the Rat series, and definitely twice as much as the Utilitech series of knives. I think, you know, when you look at the materials used, you know, we don't have a Zytel handle, we don't have stamped stainless steel liners, we got machined and hard anodized 6000 series aluminum handle scales, and frankly a level of finish on this blade that I dare say is superior to what Ontario does. The satin finish is just more consistent and it's crisper. This knife, I say, you know, you can buy this for between $52 and $58 online, you know, as of this date. I would say that this knife is as good a value at $55 as a Rat 1 is at $30 or a Utilitech is at $26. It's just a home run. It's everything we really wanted a triad lock knife to be and never could get from Cold Steel. It's pocketable, it's beautiful, it's functional, it's strong, it's well finished, and it's extremely well constructed. Stay tuned for more on this one, guys. I got a feeling it's going to get a lot of pocket time, and not just on Tanto Tuesdays. So grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and Cold Steel's factory edge on the Code 4 are sharp.